What's going on, everybody? James here from Artificial Entertainment, and welcome to another episode in the Dynamic Parkour Trace System Full Setup Series. And in this one, we're going to be looking at the starting setup for climbing and talking about how climbing works within the system. So let's go ahead and dive in. Alright, so we're back here in the project that we've been setting up all the actions in so far. So just to recap, this is a third-person project created in Unreal Engine 5.1, and at this point we've created pretty much all the ground actions. There's a few actions that are ledge type or climb initiation actions that we have not set up yet, and that's because we've been waiting for this video specifically, I suppose. Now, with talking about those initiation actions, so these are actions like climb up or vertical wall climb to ledge, attach to ledge from air, drop to ledge, jump up to ledge. These are climbing initiation actions. And just to show you here, if I go ahead and hit play here, as you can see, I've got a couple of cubes I've placed in here. And if I press the space bar, we do the vertical wall climb to ledge. And you can see I can move left and right. But if I go this far left, it stops me because it's recognizing, hey, we're on a ledge, but the ledge stops here. And the same thing goes if I go to the right side here, it'll do the same thing. So, and this is where the initiation actions are great because under the conditions that those actions can be allowed, this allows you to enter a climbing state from any one of your locomotion states, depending on how you've defined, if crouching can allow for climbing, things like that. And what I'm more referencing is like your own things you might have added. I'm not talking about anything that's inside the system, just to clarify. But now let's say, for example, in a situation where the initiation action cannot be taken. So like this wall here is way too high. We cannot do the vertical wall climb up because it's beyond the value that we've set. How do we get up to this this object? Well, that's going to be where the climb point collisions are going to come into play. And there is a generator that comes with the system. So you don't have to go and set this all up yourself. There's something that allows you to be able to easily define this. So if we go into the DPTS assets folder and then blueprints or BPs, you'll see here the climb point generator. So we're just going to take this and drag this into our world here right on top of our cube. Now, the second we do that, you can see it doesn't really make anything. You just see the actor component scene root there, and that's kind of it. Well, that's because we need to make a few settings adjustments, because by default, everything is zeroed out. And that's just to allow you to be able to adjust it to what you need without default settings causing problems, so everything's just kind of blank and allows you to just set it how you would like. So the first settings that we're going to look at are going to be under the primary settings. Now this is also all under the default. So when you have it selected under the defaults here, you'll see primary settings. Now from here, we're going to go to the point spawn settings, and the points per row, we're going to set this to 1 for right now. And we'll leave the rest of these blank here. Actually, we'll set this to 1 row. And then for the box extent, I like to start with just 50 by 50 by 50, because this gives me a nice kind of like idea of what the box shape is before I start actually trying to size it to the point that I need. So from here, now that we know how the box is going to sit on it, I know that this is the x-axis here, so I can go ahead and take the x and we'll just move it in a little bit, something like that, so that way it doesn't clip through the wall too much. Maybe a little bit more, because this way it's not, too close or too far from the wall, I should say. And then the y, we'll go ahead and extend it out, kind of make it the length of this object here a little bit, something more like that. Oh, maybe a little too much. And then we'll leave the z value at 50 for right now. Now, the one thing is you'll notice that when I align this to this height, there's still almost another entire section up here. And, depending on how you have your climb settings set up, you might not be able to reach that point without adjusting it and making it so that way you can go beyond where you would want to in other areas. So to be able to adjust this, the easiest way is to go under the primary settings, point spawn settings. We're going to go to the number of rows. Instead of 1, we're going to set this to 2. And the space between rows, we're going to set this to 150. You can also set this to 200 if you'd like. But whatever value works for you to make it so that way you've got enough space between all you 3 ledges. Again, remember when we did this before, oops, I didn't mean to hit play. We weren't actually allowed to do anything. Now, there's one other thing that we need to do before it'll actually work. Now, if we go back into the default settings here, you're going to see climb style here right in the middle. Now, right now it's defaulted to none, so we're going to set this to ledge instead. Now, what this is that it's setting the overall climb style that's supposed to be intended for this particular actor point. Now, what this essentially means in, like, more simplistic terms, whatever you set this to is going to basically focalize a behavior. So whenever it's ledge, it's going to basically say, okay, you're allowing for some left or right movement. You haven't made this so small to where the character can't really move anywhere. Right, but if that area is small and you don't want them to move left and right, and you want to initiate a climb jump action from one to the next to the next to the next, then that's where you would use the point climb. Now, for something like a vine or like a wall climb where you can kind of go in all 8 directions freely, that's the free climb. So this allows you to be able to set what the behavior is, and it also correlates to enumeration inside of the animation blueprint that we grabbed earlier, and we're going to be doing the actual like proper setup of that in this video today too. But I just want to note that this is also going to correlate to an enumeration to control your animation states. So there's a few different things that this particular value is going to control, and you want to set it based off of whatever this particular climb actor is supposed to be. So in this case, we're going to set it to a ledge because that's what we, this is kind of the style. We made it a little bit longer, so this way it can go left and right, but it's a little too short to be a free climb area. So we'll set it to ledge. Now, if we hit play and I go up to this actor here, and if I hit the space bar, you can see that now he attaches to this part of the object, this little climb collision that I've created. Now, if we had our climb jump montages selected in here, this would allow us to be able to then jump up here and actually go up to the next point. But we haven't set those up yet, so we're going to kind of just stop right there for a moment, so this way we can talk about a couple of other things before we start working on the actual montages themselves. Now, as I had said before, a lot of these climbing things are based off of initiation actions. So like one of the things that we were just doing is we were using the vertical wall climb to ledge to get up to this point. However, you can use the attach to ledge from air as well. If we were to just, lower this down a little bit, make it so that way it was closer to the actor, so this way you can actually find it. You can see that now just from a jump, when he falls, he attaches to the ledge because again, we've defined this as a climbing area. Now, one thing to keep in mind as well is if we go ahead and set this from number of rows, we're going to set this to 1 for right now, and we're going to increase the Z value a little bit because I want to show you guys how the free climb works. So if we go ahead and just increase this value here and then set, instead of the climb style from ledge, we're going to set it to free climb. And then if we hit play and we do the vertical, you can see it'll do the vertical wall climb. But you can see that now we can move in all directions, up, down, left, right, and the middle points as well. The way that the behavior is going to be selected is also going to change based off of what you select here. So it's just something really important to keep in mind when you're going through and setting up your actual points. Because if you wanted this to be a point or a free climb and you make this too big and you set it to the wrong thing, it might cause behavior problems. So sometimes it's just really good to make sure that when you're setting the climb styles, you're setting it to the active value that you're actually wanting to have. Because if you set it to the wrong one, the behavior will be wrong as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just set the Z back to 50 here. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up a little bit. Now, the other thing I want to show you guys here is if I switch it back to ledge and press play, if I go ahead and I just, do the vertical wall climb up, you can see that if I go left or right, it does the same. It stops at the edge. So that's what the ledge behavior is going to do. Whether you're spawning it as a climb point or whether you're doing it as a standard object collision, which bear in mind, all static mesh objects that are being found are going to be set of the type of ledge. That's just a default in the system. So that's where the climb style points really come into play. Now, if you are wanting to use something like the point style, where it'll kind of just attach to the area, but it won't necessarily allow you to be able to move left or right, it's just going to force a jump. If we go ahead and just make this a little bit smaller, something like that, and then go climb style and set it to point instead. Now, if I go ahead and click on play and I hit the space bar, you'll see that he goes up and he attaches to the ledge. Now, there's one problem with point specifically, that there is a way to adjust it, which is this. You can see how one hand's on the ledge, the other one is not. And the reason is because the system is just moving you from your current location upwards, and when the ledge areas are a little bit smaller, what happens is that it doesn't always put you in the middle point of the ledge. It's just going to put you where you would be vertically aligned to that point. However, to adjust this, if we go into the details panel here for the climb point generator, and we go and we look under the add targets to points, if we click true, now you'll notice that the targets are actually going the other way. So what we're going to need to do is just rotate this 180 degrees. This way the points are actually facing outwards in the way that we actually want them to, because you want to make sure that whatever direction you want it to be, it's kind of pointing in the opposite. So don't think of the arrow as like, if I attach here, the character is going to be facing this way. It's just more of like telling you like the normal facing direction. But if I go ahead and I click on play now, and I just go up to the target point and do the same thing, you can see that he adjusted. He kind of went a little bit off to the right to get that kind of more in the center. If I do the same thing here, whoops. Here, there we go. he adjusts a little bit more to the left. So this is where the target points can be used to be able to help you ensure that you're always getting to the accurate location on smaller things. And these are more useful for the point type targets than they are for ledge systems, because usually the ledges are a larger area that allow you to be able to really kind of get to a location without actually being offset from it. Now, another thing I wanted to go over really quickly with the climb point generator is that there's a variety of settings here that allow you to be able to modify how this is going to work. So let's say, for example, I'm just going to grab, I guess I can just take this guy. I'm going to duplicate this guy here. I'm going to shrink him down, something like this. And let's say, you have an actor wall, something like this, right? Where you want to be able to use this actor wall. Let's say this is all one piece and, you got this from an asset pack and it looks something like this, right? Well, to be able to make it so that way this area is going to be utilized in a climb point, all you need to do is add the climb point around the area and then just size the box. Now, if you're using multiple of these walls, like let's say you have, this particular, if I just take this and I'll group them together. So like this is your wall mesh, right? You've got this in an asset pack, this is what you're using, or this is what you modeled in Blender or whatever. If you take the climb point collision here and then group it with everything, you can now just take this and you can duplicate it and do like this if you want, and you can use it as many times as you want. Now, one thing to keep in mind though is that when you're doing this, you don't necessarily need to do it this way. An easier way would actually be to do something more like this, where we'll just take a duplicate of the wall, Control D, and we'll push it over and kind of align it up in like a, like creating a wall space area. So something like that, right? Well, instead of doing that, what you can do is, really one of two things, but the easiest way is to just take the Y and extend it and then move it. And this way now it'll cover the whole area. So like these are ways to be able to, you might have to just put these over certain areas that you want to define for climbing. But if I go ahead and I click on play, you'll see that he attaches to the area pretty well. But if I don't define this as a climbing area, if I take this out and I go ahead and I click on play, he's not going to attach to the area. Because there's certain blocking checks that are happening inside of the system, which there is going to be an update coming out that's going to be a new experimental feature that will override some of this. But there might still be situations where you would need to use the climb points. So that's why I'm not necessarily talking about it in these series videos. There's going to be an additional video or a couple of videos that are going to be going over that once it comes out. But I just want to note that, you can always add the collision boxes over pre-existing areas. This way it'll just, do exactly what it needs to do, and it won't give you any problems. So I'm going to go ahead and just size this Y box down, kind of get it something like within the size of our current wall. And then I'm just going to go ahead and ungroup all of these. Now the next thing is, let's say you don't have a mesh that has that type of object, and you just have a flat wall and you're working with pieces. You're kind of piecing it all together. Well, you can also spawn objects in using the climb point collisions as well. Now, this is not a necessary piece. This is just kind of like if you want to add that visual element that doesn't exist already, you can go ahead and do this. And the way that you do it is by going and highlighting the actor, going into the settings under the default section, and there's going to be an option that says spawn item on point settings. So this is essentially going to be the menu you're going to use to spawn objects. So if we go in under the objects to spawn and make sure under item to spawn or spawn item type, you set it to whatever you want. You can spawn both static meshes and skeletal meshes, though I haven't really found a whole lot of situations where you would be spawning skeletal meshes, but I figured it was a lot of fun just messing around with it, so I figured I just opened it up. But we're going to use the static mesh, and we're going to set it to a cube as the mesh that we're going to use. And then we're just going to select the spawn item on point checkbox here, and you can see that it spawns a cube. However, the origin point of the cube is kind of misaligned, so it makes it a little difficult to actually, for it to be in the right spot and things like that, but that's okay. Now, from here, what we can do is underneath at the bottom here, there's spawned item transform. Now, we can use this to be able to actually adjust how the item is going to be sitting. So we're going to take the location, and we're going to move it over. Let's see, we need to move it up a little bit. Yeah, so we'll move it a little bit forward on the X value, and then we'll go ahead and move it down on the Z value. Now, the one thing to remember is when you're working with, at least with this type of object, right, the origin is down at the bottom here. So what this means is that if we align the bottom of this to the Z value here, just like that, we can then take the scale value of the Z, and you can see that it does not modify the bottom, and we can just use that to align the top. Perfect. So now we're going to go to this scale on the Y, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to need to move it over more, just because of, again, that origin point is in the bottom left corner. So this means that when we scale it, it's going to keep this spot intact, but this is going to go, it's kind of going to go this way. So we're going to go again on the Y scale and just keep going across until it fits in. Now, perfect. So now we have our object fitting in. However, we need to reduce its X scale a little bit so that way it's not clipping through to the other side. So there we go. Perfect. So now we have our object in place. Now, the thing is, we don't need to do this for every single one. Once you have one of these in and you wanted to put, let's say, like how we had in the beginning, 2 objects in, number of rows from 1 to 2, and you can see now it spawns 2 of those cubes with the same size. So you don't have to do this for each one. It's just the initial setup. Now, another thing to bear in mind is that, let's say you put a new point in. So if we go back into the assets here, blueprints, and then grab another climb point generator here. Well, let's say now I've got a blank one in the world, and I want to take a setting from this one, but I don't want to use everything. Well, you can actually right-click on, for example, point spawn settings, and then click on copy, go to the other one, point spawn settings, paste. There we go. Now we have the boxes, but we don't actually have the items inside of it. Now, if we want to add the items as well, you can do the same thing. Where we go back to this one, and we can just go to the spawn item point settings, copy, go to this one, spawn item point settings, and paste. Now, realistically, you could also just, take this and Control D and drag it over, and that would probably be the faster way to do it, but I'm just saying the individual menus in here, you can actually copy the specific values that you might want and bring them over to another point just for an easier workflow. Now that we've got these climb points in here, let's start talking about setting up the actual animations. So the one thing that I want to start with is actually going to be in the animation blueprint, because if you notice here, if we move left and right, there's no actual movement. We don't actually have like a left and right that's happening when we're ledge shimmying along. And if I were to take climb point generator here, we'll just do this, let's say 20 by 150 by 150. And then we'll go 1 and 1. So we'll just make this kind of like a small little area here, something like this. And then we're going to set it from, set it to free climb here. Now, if we hit play, and if I do the attach to, you can see that he does the ledge attach. Even though this is a free climb area, you can see the behavior for free climb is being performed, but the animation is still attached to ledge. So this is the area we're going to work on first, is getting the animation blueprint side of things adjusted, fixed, and how to be able to get it all flowing correctly so you can get your animations to kind of work correctly in your blend spaces. So the first thing we're going to want to do is open up the animation blueprint that you're using and the character folder as well. So I have here the tutorial ABP. I'm just going to minimize that. And then I'm also going to go to my third person, blueprints, and BP third person character, because we want both of these, because we're going to be doing some adjustments in both. So inside of the BP third person character, we want to navigate to where our movement input is being set. So that's going to be this one right here. Now you'll see we got a few different events that are going through. We got the action value X and Y, and everything is kind of being input into here. Now what we want to do though is we're actually going to take the X, which is the, I believe the forward back. Oh no, it's the left right. So we're going to take this and promote it to a variable, left/right input. And then we're going to get the Y, promote to a variable, and then we're going to go the forward/back input. Now we're doing this because this way we can get these values into our animation blueprint. And the best way, I should say, just because it makes it so that way the values that are being pushed through are equal to what everything else is reading, it's best to just start from the actual source of the actual input scaler. So we're just going to put the execution here. As you can see, I just put it off of the get movement input at the end here. Now we do want to take both of these, highlight and Control D to duplicate it, And then off of completed, we're going to set these to 0 because we want to make sure that once we're done completing and we're not hitting anything anymore, we're not triggering any sort of direction, we're going to set this back to 0. So now that we have these values here, we can compile and save. And now we're going to go to our animation blueprint. And in the event graph here, what we're going to do is pull off the as BP third person character, and we're going to get the left right input, and we're going to pull off again and get forward back input. So we're going to get both of these new values that we just created. Now, we're not going to just right click and promote to a variable, because what's going to end up happening when you do that is that it's going to directly go from 0 to 1 to -1, and it's going to be a static, very quick adjustment. So we actually want to create an interpolation to help assist the smoothing of these values. So to make things easier, we are going to do a right-click promote to variable, but we're going to disconnect just so that way it just kind of names it for us. So we're right-click promote to variable. Wow, had a definite tongue stutter there, my bad. So now from here, now that we got these values here, we're also going to grab references to them and push them into here. So now we got our animation blueprint versions of the values and our third-person character values that are actually being set. So I just compiled and saved just to make sure, everything gets saved and nothing crashes and I get a problem, But from here, what we're going to do is off of the set node here, the forward and back input, we're just going to go ahead and go and f-interp 2. And we can get 2 of these, 1 for each. Now, we want to take the delta time x off of the event blueprint update animation. Now, if you make your own function for this, you can just add a float value into the function and feed it through. So that way you can still get it. But this is the best way to make sure that you're getting the proper delta time, even though you can technically use the get world delta seconds as well. But this way, the interp is actually going to be matching the tick rate of the update animation. So it just provides better, smoother results realistically. Now, for the current, what we're going to do is get whatever value it's being set. So for this one, it's forward back, and for this one, it's left right. However, the target is going to be whatever this value is on the other side. So we'll put this into target, and we'll put this one into target, just like that. Now, the interp speed, you can play around with this however you want. We're going to start with something around like 20. We'll probably end up reducing this, to be honest with you. But now, okay, perfect. So we got our values being set, and we're interpolating them to help smooth out how they're going to be actually calculated during animation. So now from here, what we're going to do is we're going to make the blend spaces that we're going to use for the ledge climb and the free climb type movements. So we're going to go in the tutorial assets folder here. In my animations folder, I have the movements here for free climb as well as the movements for ledge as well. So we're going to right click, go to animation, and we're going to create a new blend space. Now bear in mind, these animations are just in place standard, animation blueprint type animations, not root motion based. And they're assigned to the skeleton that I'm using for my player character. So that's the only thing that we've done with these. So we're just going to go ahead and click on the retarget skelly for the blend space, which is my skeleton for my player character. And then we're just going to name this one ledge movement underscore BS. Now we can take this and just duplicate it. So this way we can get 2 of them. And this one's going to be free climb underscore movement underscore BS. So we'll start with the ledge movement 1 here. Now what we're going to do is under the horizontal axes, I guess realistically for the ledge movement, we're going to make this a 1D. So we're actually going to delete this one out and we're going to recreate it. So we're going to go animation, legacy, blend space 1D. Now the reason why is because ledge movements you're just moving kind of either left, right, or not moving at all. It's more of a 2-dimensional type of movement. So in order to make it so that way it's not using all values and you're not having like a blank axis value, it's better to just use the 1D blend space because then we can just, we don't have anything we have to ignore. Now I am going to go ahead and just quickly ledge movement underscore BS, just get that named so that way I can find it later. All right, so now in the ledge movement blend space, which again is a 1D blend space that we corrected, we're going to go onto the horizontal axes. We're just going to go left, right, input. And we're going to set the minimum axis value to -1, maximum axis value of 1, and grid divisions of 4 is actually fine. So now from here, what we need to do is find our ledge movement animations. So the ledge idle, we can put right here in the dead center, because this is if we are at 0, it's not moving left or right. We're just kind of chilling on the ledge. That's all we're doing. Now, the next thing we're going to do is grab our move left, put that there, and then our move right, and put this here. This way you can see here, he'll do the left or the right. So we can go ahead and just take a look at this, and take a look at this. Did I put these backwards? Nope, we're good. Okay, perfect. So we're going to go ahead and save this. And now we're going to open up the free climb movement here. Now, this one, we do have a 2-dimensional, or I guess 3-dimensional, but 2 different axes. So we're going to go in the horizontal axes. This one's going to be left/right input. And then we're going to do the same thing of -1 for the minimum, 1 for the maximum. And on the vertical axes here, we're going to go forward/back input. And then again, minimum axis value of -1, maximum of 1. So we're just going to make this grid here a little bit bigger. And then I'm just going to look for my climb animation. So I have this 8-way directional climbing animation here that I have from a climbing animation pack that I got. I honestly couldn't even tell you when. But anyways, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the climbing idle in place, and we're going to put it just like before, where we're going to put it dead center just like this. And then we're going to take the down and put it, if it's the forward back input is -1, left right is not anything. Down left is going to be if it's -1 and -1. Down right is going to be -1 for the forward and back. Or I mean negative, yeah, and then positive for the left and right. And then left is going to go right over here on the left side, right on the right side, up on the upside. Now again, now just to note, I shouldn't say again, I'm holding shift, for those of you that don't know, to be able to make it so it snaps to one of these points on the grid here. So it helps you to be able to like move things and get things in place faster. So like if I take this and I don't click shift, you can see I can drag it anywhere in the grid here. But if I hold shift, it snaps to one of these points. So it just makes it a lot easier, so that way I can just put that right there at up left. And then the last one here, we're just going to take and put it into up right, and there we go. So now we have up, down, left, right, up, right, all those directions. Perfect. So we're going to save that. And now we're going to go back into our animation blueprint here. So this way we can add these in. So we'll go back into the free climb movement here. And if you click on these 3 little dots here, this will actually bring up the animation blueprint that's currently tied to the skeleton that you're working on for that animation. So what we can do here is in the anim graph, now we're actually going to just go ahead and delete this out. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to keep with the active climb style here. So just to kind of recap here, if I go back to the update animation here, it's from the BP third person character, which is just your standard character reference, pulling off and getting the dynamic parkour trace system, pulling off of that and getting an is valid check. This is just to help on the first frame tick, because you might get an error on the first tick of event begin play because it takes a minute for components to load. So it might on the first frame give you an issue. That's why this validation check just takes that out. And then from here, if it is valid, we're just, going ahead and pulling off and getting active climb style and setting that as a variable. And then inside of here, we're seeing if active climb style, pulling off and getting the enum equal value there. And if it's equal to non-active value, then we're just going into whatever our base locomotion is. Now for base locomotion, this is whatever your pre-existing animation blueprint has. So you're running, you're crouching, walking, all that good stuff. Anything that's not going to be in the system. So this is where it separates what you have with what you need for climbing and things like that. Now, we are going to recreate it, but I just wanted to start from scratch here just to kind of make things a little easier. So we're going to right click and go state machine. So this way we can add in the new state machine, and this one's going to be active climb states. And then we'll plug it in off of false here, just like this, and off of the entry, pull off, add state, climb states. And then we'll just go ahead, open this up. Now, the way that we can make this really easy for ourselves to be able to set this up is if we pull off the result and get a blend pose by climb type. You'll see blend pose E_climb type. This is the actual enumeration for climb style, the named value climb style. So now that we have this here, we can just right click and we're going to add ledge, point, and free climb. We're going to leave wall run off for right now because we're working on wall run in a different video. But for the active ledge climb style here, we're just going to plug this into the active enum value. So whatever the active climb style is, it will then select a pose for us. And this is where we can go ahead and start putting in our values. So we got our free climb blend space here. We can take this and plug this off of free climb. And then for the ledge movement here, we'll take this and plug this off of ledge. Now for the point climb, we're actually just going to grab the ledge idle animation, because ultimately this is just he's going to kind of just hang on the ledge until he does some sort of a jump animation. So we're just going to put that in there, but we do want to make sure that with this, we go into the details of the animation and make sure loop animation is checked. Now, the way that I like to do this, you don't have to do it this way, is for these types of values, it's just easier if we right click on the actual value. So left, right input, if we right click, and then go to binding. Under the pin option here, we can just set, so left, right input, boom, right there, bam, left, right input. And then do the same thing here, right click on the pin value, go to binding, left, right input. Do the same thing for the forward, back, binding, forward, back input, bam. So there we go, now we got those in there. And these are actually what are called thread safe functions, or thread safe references. And basically what it means is that there's certain ways to be able to go about animation blueprinting that allows you for a bit of a better optimization. And yeah, so this is just kind of a better way to go about it. I'm even actually going to go ahead and just delete that, and we're going to go pin, and we'll set that to active climb style, just like that. So now it's still using the same value, but rather than being plugged in directly, it's just kind of like in there bound to this event type. So now if we go ahead and compile and save, now you can see it's going to give you an error here, or a note. It says default pose was visible but ignored. That's totally fine because we're not using the default pose. So that's not a big deal. So now with these plugged in here, if we go compile, save, and then we'll minimize this really quick, and then go ahead and click on play. So now if I go up to the ledge action here, oh, that's right, we set these to point, I believe. So we'll set the climb style here from point to ledge. This way we can move left and right. But if I go up to this now, we should get a nice smooth movement left and right. Look at that. Bam. Perfect. So now he goes left and right just like we wanted to. And then if we go over to the free climb area here and we just kind of jump on top of it, you can see that he does the free climb type of blending now. Now we can, increase that blend out on the free climb. Might be a little too fast. And this is where those interpolation values are really, really, really useful, because it allows us to be able to define how quickly or slowly we want the animation to go in between its values. So on the forward back input, left right input, what we can do is we'll take the active climb style, we'll just kind of grab it like this and see if enum equal, and then if enum is equal to, let's say, we'll just do it for a free climb adjustment right now. So right now, 20 works for the ledge movement, but if we pull off of this and get a select float, and we'll plug these into both of them, so both the interrupt speed for the left and right and the forward and back, and then the Boolean value here off of the active climb style, and then checking if it's equal to free climb, we'll plug that into there, and then instead of 20, we'll set it to 10. But if it's not free climb, we'll set it to 20. So this way for the ledge actions, it'll go a little bit faster, but it should smooth out the left and right, up and down, forward, back movement to free climbing now a little bit better. So if we go ahead and go to the ledge now, we should get the same nice fluid movements, which we can see. We still get that nice left and right, forward, back, and idle transition. But if I go on to you can see now that it's a lot smoother. We're not getting nearly as much jittering, and it's like that harsh static movement now with that free climb blend. So there we go. Now that we have the blueprint set up for our animation blueprint setup, for our climbing states, now what we can do is start adding in some climbing transitional actions. So these are going to be called the climb jump actions, which are a pretty straightforward action type. But there's a lot of different ways to be able to define how that's going to be set up. So we're going to cover some of that in this video, but there's going to be a separate video covering ledge actions, and another video that's going to be covering modifications in the settings for ledge types. This way I can separate out how the settings are going to be displayed in each video. But what we're going to do now, though, is go ahead and start working on getting our climb jump working. This way we can kind of go from here to here and then up to here and actually start climbing up objects. But before we start really working on the montages themselves, what we're going to want to do is add in the execution event inside of the third person character. So we're going to open up the third person blueprints, BP third person character, and then we're going to go on over to under my blueprint, interfaces, action events, and you're going to see the climb jump action right here. So we're going to double click, put that into our graph, drag it over to the rest of our events here, and just do like what we've been doing in the past, where we box select the play montage, the mesh node, and Control D to duplicate. Now I do recommend making sure that you have a good amount of space underneath, because the climb direction selector will actually be pretty long. So pull off the montage, get a select node here, and then we'll plug the enum into the index, and you can see here, yeah, it's got some length to it because it's got all of the directions, including an additional none, so 9 in total, I think it would be the option selection. So now that we have our area to put our montages in, let's go ahead and get our montages actually set up. So we're going to go into the tutorial assets folder for me. That's going to be under animations, and then we have these animations here. So we'll start with the jump up here, this one right here. So essentially what these actions are is that it starts off in sort of like a ledge hang, and then it goes and jumps up and then ends in another ledge hang. So these are sort of transitional animations, climbing transitions. And we can use this to be able to actually move from one climb point to another. So what we're going to actually do real quick is we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call this climb jump. And we're going to put all of these in. So we get the left, the right, the up, and down here. And we're going to put these all into climb jump. And then we'll create another folder and call this montages. This way we have all of them. Now, there are 8 directions. I only have these 4 animations because I don't have the up, down, left, right variants for the diagonal directions, but I'm just going to be using the left, rights for this example. But if you have all 8 directions, cool. If not, you can always just select 4-way. And I'll show you guys how to do that once we get the montages set up. So we're going to go ahead and open up the up animation here. So we're going to go ahead and just select the down, shift select to the up, right click, create anim montage, and then we're going to go ahead and push these over into the montages section. Now, if we go ahead and then open up that folder here, now we're going to open up the actual montage for the jump up. So we got this here like this. Perfect. So the way that the climb up jump works is that it's realistically only going to supply back one location point that you're going to want to use, which is warp 1. That is basically the height point where you would want to attach to for this found object area. So we're going to go right click and adding a new notify state for motion warping. But unlike what we've done in the past, we're not going to align it to the beginning of the animation. We're actually going to, at least not for this one. If yours he does like the jump right out the gate, then you would do that. But we want to look for right about where he's kind of off the object. Something right about here would be a good starting point. And then we're going to look at the middle point before he grabs on, something right about here. And we'll put the end there. And then under the details section for the root motion modifier, expand the menu there. Warp target name is going to be warp 1. Check ignore z-axes, or uncheck I should say, and keep warp rotation checked. Now from here, we're just going to want to also make sure to right click, add notify, and we're going to do the set climbing notify. So we'll put this right there at the bottom. Now we'll keep it with the jump up right now, and we'll just kind of leave it there, just so I can show you guys a couple of things before we continue on into the other action directions. So inside of the actual character blueprint here, under the climb actions here, I'm going to go ahead and just add the jump up here, which I think I still have it selected. I do not. Okay, that's fine. We're just going to search for climb jump, and we got the directions here thanks to Unreal Engine Smart Search, and we can go ahead and just get the jump up. Perfect. So we'll compile and save, and then we're going to also select the dynamic parkour trace system here on the side, and then under climb settings, and then under climb type settings, point to point type, expand the menu a little bit. Allowed point climb directions. So this is where I was saying here you can set it to 4-way. If you just set up, down, left, right, you're just setting these 4 directions. You don't have to set the diagonal directions if you don't want to, but you can obviously just select them all if you want. But for right now, we're just going to leave up as the only available direction, compile, save, and then we're going to go ahead and play, and I'm going to show you guys what happens. So if I go over to this object here, we're going to go ahead and just climb up it. You can see we get that nice attach. Then if I press W here, you can see that he's going to climb up and then attach to this ledge here. So if I press W again, he's then going to attach to the static mesh of the actor because it's been found that, this area isn't blocked. Now we currently can't go down because, well, we don't have actually down being set, but you can see that it's selecting down and it's tracing the right area, but you can see found action allowed is false. So this means that we don't actually are not currently allowing this action, so that's something we have to fix. The main thing I wanted to point out here is that when we go and we do the climb jump here, you can see how he transitions nicely, but sometimes you don't always get that alignment on the first try. I will say I definitely got lucky there. I don't usually even get it ever on the first try like that. But if I, just to show you here, if I were to extend, so like sometimes, it would appear that the root motion stops maybe something right about here. So if I were to extend that and put the set climbing notify there, save, and then hit play, you're going to notice that he's actually going to attach a little off. You can see there's a little bit of jitter at the end of the attachment. It wasn't really a smooth, like that's a nice smooth attachment. There's a little bit of jitter to it, and he's also a little bit higher off from the object. Not by a whole lot, but, something like this, I think a more dramatic example would probably display it better. So let's see, we'll go this, and then we'll do this. And you can see, so he jitters and he drops below it. And that's because of the fact that the root motion is kind of ending back in the original set here. So that's one thing you just want to keep an eye on your animation for when he reaches the peak of his root motion. You can see here he's just kind of reaching out in front of him, which means that he's probably reached the peak of his height. And then he's attaching on and just grabbing and kind of more just swinging forward. But again, his root bone, if we look at that, is right here. So with that in mind, though, now we can go ahead and we're going to start setting up the other directions. So we're going to go and get the down jump here. So we're going to just do the same thing and look at where he releases, which would be probably right about, I would say, here. And then go into the notifies, add notify, and then we're going to do add notify state, and then motion warping. And then look at where he goes down and where he reattaches. So maybe something like right about here. And then we'll put that there. And then we'll add a new notify track. This way we can just do the right click, add notify, and make sure to set climbing at the end here. Now for the motion warp window, it's going to be just like what we did for climb up. We're going to set it to warp 1, uncheck ignore z-axes, leave warp rotation, and then we're just going to click on save. Now if we go back to our BP third person character, but before we do that, if we just click on this little browse file option, this will highlight it in the content browser. So when we go back to our character blueprint and we click the little arrow here, it'll put it right in for down, so we don't even have to go in searching for it. So we'll just compile, save, minimize, and then we'll go ahead and click on play. Oh, wait, almost forgot. We do need to make sure to select down as an option. So we're going to go into the climb type, point to point, allow directions, and select down, compile and save. And now we'll go ahead and click on play. Because if we don't have the action allowed, it won't actually, allow it to do anything. But now we can see that he does what he's supposed to do, but not really perfectly. And that's why I chose down as the next option. So you'll notice that he still slides a little bit at the end of the animation. And the reason is because it would appear that the root bone doesn't quite end there. So what we want to do is maybe extend this a little bit, but then we also, in the asset details here, we're going to take the blend time and set it to 0.1. This is going to help it so that way it blends out a little bit quicker and a little more properly when we're doing the drop down animation. So we'll go ahead and try it now. You can see he gets a little bit better, but it's still a little offset there. So we can probably get that a little bit more proper. If we look just another frame, maybe something right about here, go ahead and just kind of move it up just a smidge. And this is where, we're just, again, fine-tuning that motion warping window until we get to where we want. So we're getting a little closer, but I think we need to go up just a couple more frames, something like this. And then we'll go ahead and try it now. So we go ahead and just climb up a little bit. Go up one, and then we drop down. There we go. Now we attach to the ledge. Perfect. So we can go up, and then down, and down. Perfect. So now that we got our jump up and down, now we just got to get our left and right in place, which again, is just following the same exact principle. We'll open up the right direction, and we'll kind of look at where he really lets go, which is going to be right about in probably about frame 8. And then notifies, right click, notify state, motion warping. Look at where he's attaching back on, which we'll set right there for right now, but we might have to adjust it, just like how we've always been doing. And then under the root motion modifier, warp target name is going to be warp 1, ignore z-axes uncheck, keep warp rotation checked, and then we're going to add a new notify track, and right click, add notify, and set climbing. Now we're going to do this for the left and right versions, and then we're going to go back in and test them. So we're going to open up the left side now, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look at where your release is off, which is right about at the same point, it looks like, maybe a frame later. And then we're just going to go, we'll add the track ahead of time this time. But we'll right click, notify state, motion warping, and then we'll put our start right about there. Look at where he's going to attach back onto the next ledge, which will be maybe right about here, and drag that window out. And then again, right click, add notify, and set climbing. Perfect. So now we have the left and right versions going. Oh, we actually have to, I forgot we have to do this information for this warp window here. So we're going to click on this and go up to the root motion modifier. Make sure to set this name to warp 1. Make sure to get the ignore z axes, uncheck that, keeping warp rotation checked. And now if you save, there we go. No error. All right, so now we're going to go back to the BP third person character. And for the left and right variants, we're just going to look for climb, jump. And then we're going to just take it and we'll just control C so we can get it again. But we'll select under for the left, climb, jump left, and then for the right, climb, jump right. Perfect. Now I'm going to go ahead and just select left and right for directions. We're going to leave the diagonal directions unchecked for just right now. And we're going to go ahead and play. Now what I'm going to do though is I'm going to take the free climb area. I'm not going to delete it actually. I'm just going to move it off to the side for right now. And then I'm going to make a new version of these. So this way we can give ourselves something to jump in between. So something like that. So now if we go ahead and just click on play. And I go ahead and I just climb up to this object here. You can see we can jump over to here. Now we can jump over to here. But again, the same problem. So we're going to go into the left and rights. And we're going to make sure to set the blend time to 0.1. Do the same thing on the right side. Make sure to set the blend time to 0.1. And we're probably going to want to adjust the montage positions or the warp window positions as well. But let's see what this does. So if we go over and we try to just do the jump over, all right, we get a much better attachment now. So you can see now we can go left, we can go right, we can go down, and we can go up. So now we have all the directions in place, and you can always define those warp windows however you want. You can define a lot of information about how it's actually overall going to work. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if we open up the character blueprint here, so third person blueprints, BP third person character, and then into the dynamic parkour trace system details panel here. There's a few options here that you're definitely going to want to pay attention to. The first one being is the max jump transition distance. This is how far you can actually do a climb jump. So anything beyond 350 units is not going to be allowed for a jump. So you're going to want to make sure that if you're finding it that it's not actually allowing you to do the action, and the objects are a little farther apart, you might just have to increase this value a little bit. Now, there are also a lot of settings that are involved with the climbing search. And we're going to be covering these in a separate video, so I don't want you guys to worry too much about that. We are going to be going over everything. Now, one thing that if you're starting from scratch, you might see is that when you first try to do the actions and for the lineup, you might need to make an adjustment to your value. If we go into the advanced modifications option here, your ledge trace tolerance might, I think it's a default of 15. Yeah, so if you set them from 15 to 10, this will help the climb search be able to actually detect the ledges if it's missing it. So yours, just to show you yours real quick, set this to 15. I didn't realize that I didn't have it at the default. But if I go ahead and just do it now, you can see that it doesn't actually hit the ledge object. Now, it's because this is a new settings menu that it's been added in, and I'm going to be going over this in videos and stuff like that, so I don't want you guys to think I'm leaving this out, but I'm just covering this for right now because I did have to make, I did make an adjustment, I just don't remember doing it. But anyway, so if we go up and we do this now, oh, I set it back to 15, I'm going to set it back to 10. So if I set it back to 10, and I go ahead and I do this now, you can see that now it detects the ledges. So that might be one problem that you might see is that the ledge trace tolerance, if it's at 15, set it down to 10, that'll work. You can also mess around with this value if it needs to go even further. The lower the value, the more forward the trace is going to run. The less the value, the less the trace is going to run. And that's in a forward direction, just to clarify. So, but that's, again, part of a new menu, and that's the ledge trace tolerance that you're adjusting, just to reiterate. So if you do have that problem, set it to 10. You should be okay, but you might have to, set it to 5, set it to something smaller, and it'll allow you to be able to trace ledges farther from the farther from the wall and from the character. Now, as far as the up left, up right, down left, down right, all that stuff goes. So I'm just going to go ahead and get my left, put this into up left and down left. And then for right, I'm going to grab that and put this into upright and down right. And I'm also going to make sure to select all of the directions here. So climb type settings, point to point, directions, up, down, left, right. Perfect. All right. So compile, save. I just want to show you guys really quickly that, if you follow the same principle, all these animations are going to basically, again, they're going to be following that same principle. So if you follow it, they're intended to, and everything's going to line up. So if I go ahead and climb up this here, and then if I just go a little to the side here, and then I do an up left action, you can see that because it actually traced away from the climb point, it actually found the static mesh object instead. And if you'll notice here, I'm going to go over to the edge here where I can't go anymore. You'll see that there is a bit of a gap window with these traces. So there is a chance that it might miss. And the way to be able to adjust that is if we go into the character blueprint here for the dynamic parkour trace system, and then we look at under the climb trace options, climb point search trace. And then under trace settings, you're going to see a trace radius. So this is actually controlling how big of an area around the character it's going to be. So if we set this to example 90 and then hit play and I go up to this object here, you can see that area is now much bigger. So it's able to now find there's a lot less space in between where it's not going to, where it might try to find something improperly. But even still, sometimes it does find the objects above it rather than below it. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that certain times, depending on how close your objects are, you may have some skip overs, but that's only if, so like these are close together and they can be found by the system. So because these can be found by the system, that's ultimately making it so that way they're just being used as the intended climb point to be used for the direction. Now, I am working on a way to be able to make it so that way it's a little more fine-tuned, but if these objects were not this close together, it would not be found. It's just because it's within the available area and it's within the defined space that can be used for climb jumps, it just skips over this and then goes to here instead. And again, this is not a constant behavior. This is just if it's too close, you might experience this until I get a fix worked in at least. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about really quickly before we close out the video is I want to talk about the traces. Just so that way when you're debugging and doing things, you have a little bit of a better understanding of the way these traces all work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the draw debug type to for duration on both this the climb point trace and the secondary climb search trace settings. So I'm going to set this to draw debug for duration and compile and save. Now, one thing to bear in mind, make sure to set the draw debug to 5. On the secondary climb search, this is also running active searches as well. So when you're doing this, just so I can show you here, is if I go left and right, you're going to see a lot of traces being generated here. And it can't slow down viewport. So just be mindful when you're doing this. Sometimes if you're going to do a something that runs all the time, the draw time is best to set to a lower value. That's why I dropped it from 30 to 5, even though it's still a little bit long, but it's okay. All right, so the thing that I wanted to talk about is when we're doing a climb up action, you can see here the first trace goes up, which is the box trace, hits the object there, and then it traced the climb point to be able to find where it's supposed to go. Same thing if I go this way as well. However, if I go up here and then I do this, you can see that there's an additional set of traces now tracing the entire space between where we are and where we might be wanting to go. This is all... So when you're not using a climb point, it's going to not use the box trace. The box trace is primarily just for finding these locations here created by the climb point generator. And then everything else is being traced through the frontal and downward sphere traces that the system is using to calculate object dimensions to then calculate what action type might be the best choice. So I just want to point this out that when you're debugging, right, and you're having an issue with like the climb point not being found, A lot of times it's something that's might be to do with the box trace rather than the actual sphere traces, which again, the box trace is all the climb point search trace settings. The little sphere traces that are happening after the fact are the secondary climb point search trace settings. So if you ever need to adjust or take a look at something, this is how you're going to be able to define it. If you need to know if you're hitting climb point actors and know if you're actually detecting things accordingly, you just need to show the climb point search trace settings. If you need to be able to look out what's happening when you're trying to like climb up, vault over, certain ledge validity checks and things like that are happening, you would want to enable the secondary climb search trace settings. Now, I do plan on putting in a buffer. This way, things that are going to be running at frame rate are not going to actually run like and provide as many traces as they are right now. But there's a few other things I'm working on in the background, so that's kind of going to be probably the last thing I add in before the next big update. Anyways, there's so much more to climbing. I do just want to iterate this. We're going to be going over a lot of different action types, different ways to be able to use the inputs, the way the modifiers control things. So there's still a lot more to cover. But now at least we've got the good understanding about how the climbing system works, how the climb point generators work. We got our AVP functionality set up, and we got climb directional jumps working. So we're in good space now. Next video, where like I said, we're going to be covering all the ledge actions. So this is going to be the ledge-based versions of climb up, vault over, being able to drop and jump off ledges, being able to jump to ledges behind you, and all the different cool stuff that climbing is entailed. Again, this video was just primarily focused on the initial setup, explaining how it all works, and getting some basic functionality in place, but we're going to be covering more action types in the next videos. So I hope to see you there, guys. I hope you're excited. I know I am. But that's going to close it out for today's video, guys. Hope to see you in the next one. But until then, stay tuned. And as always, stay animated.